Hi, my name is Scott Cochran, and welcome to the latest edition of our How To series, which is how to deliver an effective presentation. I think we can all say that at some point in our lives we've had to sit through a very ineffective or a miserable presentation, and there's a number of reasons for that. And they range from a presenter launching into a tangent to someone presenting with a lack of enthusiasm. But one thing's for certain, a poorly developed and delivered presentation, it makes time stand still. It's agony, and no one wants to be in agony. Like all of our how-to series, we're going to cover the basics to get you started, and then encourage you to make an appointment and talk with one of the professionals in the center to hone your skills even further. You know, the key to getting better is practice, and there's just no substitute for live rehearsals. Today we're going to cover a couple of things. First of all, the audience and the material. We're going to look at common mistakes, larger mistakes, and finally we're going to look at positioning the conversation with the audience and authenticity. And those things are a little bit tricky. And again, we'll set you up with the basics and then encourage you to come in and practice and talk about how those things might fit your style. One of the fundamental oversights in presenting is understanding your audience. Framing a presentation for college students should be different than for colleagues or superiors in the workplace. Much like dress, your presentation should be tailored to your purpose. You wouldn't wear shorts and flip-flops to a business meeting, and you shouldn't give a casual, jargon-laden presentation to a group of potential customers. So make sure that you tailor for your audience. And that leads us to whether you should present the same to all groups. And the obvious answer is no, except for one aspect. You absolutely need to be truthful in everything that you deliver. Again, presentation should be tailored for the audience, the situation, and purpose, but absolutely should be truthful in any instance. Most inexperienced presenters spend a tremendous amount of time on structuring the material. This ensures that you get your information transmitted, and it's the safe way to do it. 70% of your time on structure, 30% of your time on the emotional connection. But the problem is it ensures that your information is transmitted. It doesn't ensure that it's remembered. Instead, you should actually spend more of your time on the emotional connection and less of your time on structure. And I don't mean less time overall. It means you should spend quite a bit more additional time on making an emotional connection. The most common mistakes that I've seen in presentations are reading from a script, ignoring time constraints, and going off on tangents. I want to clarify reading from a script. There's nothing inherently wrong from reading from a script, as long as you don't deliver your presentation in a monotone reading style. That's when you're going to lose people, and that's when you're going to shut down your audience. Ignoring time constraints and going off on tangents, those are irritations that just have to be avoided at all costs. When you tell someone your presentation will last 30 minutes, make sure your presentation lasts only 30 minutes. And the only way to ensure that is practice. Tangents are also something that need to be avoided. Now, there's a definition of tangents that needs to be clarified. There are tangents within the subject matter that are absolutely acceptable, but what I'm talking about here are tangents that go off into a direction not related to the material at all. The larger mistakes include not knowing your audience, which we've talked about, so we'll not go any further in that. Failing to grab the audience's attention, especially at the beginning of your presentation, is a very difficult thing to overcome. I like to start with a story. I like to start with something that engages the audience. I always tell people to be careful with jokes. Jokes can be effective, but if you have an audience that does not respond and it's silent with a bunch of crickets, that makes it difficult to move forward as well. If you do make a joke and it doesn't go over well, just press on. It's not the end of the world. Using visuals that don't relate to your message used to be in vogue. Everything from spinning logos to artwork to pictures just to add creativity to a presentation. That was done quite a bit. I've asked people, and I recommend that people avoid visuals. If you see my presentations, most of them are void of most visuals. I believe that you should focus on the presenter and the words versus the pictures. Another mistake that will be a nail in the coffin is talking to the screen. And I'm not talking about glancing over your shoulder and looking at which bullet point you're referring to. I'm talking about a full-on, back to the audience, talking to the screen. It happens every once in a while, especially with mature presenters who have presented material over and over again, but it's something that absolutely has to be avoided. It shuts down an audience. Rushing through slides is typically caused by one of two things. One, you're on a time constraint and you absolutely need to get back on time track, or two, out of nervousness and lack of practice. Both of those are something that can be avoided with practice, and you need to make sure that you don't speed through your slides. They're not effective in that manner anyway. And finally, presenting without passion. I absolutely hate to see someone get up in front of a group and walk through a presentation with no emotion, no passion, or no interest, or appearing to have no interest themselves. It's hard to ask your audience to be interested and engaged if you don't have passion yourself. Now let's talk a minute about how to position your presentation with the audience. Most presentations are like a one-way tennis match, with the presenter talking at the audience and the message being somewhat like the ball. And this setup creates a one-way flow of information. Every once in a while the ball gets returned in the form of a question for the audience, but it subtly pits you against the audience, and that's something that we want to avoid. A more effective way to present is to position yourself in a manner so that you're on the same side of the conversation as the audience. This enrolls your audience in the presentation, and it makes them part of the process. It's all about framing, and it's not difficult, but it does take practice, and it's a little tricky. Let me give you an example. If I want to present on the value of creating an effective resume, or the benefits of an effective resume, I can start out a presentation telling you, I want to tell you about the benefits of creating an effective resume. Now, you know what the message is about, you know what the presentation is going to be delivering, but it doesn't enroll the audience and doesn't put you in a side-by-side positioning with the presenter. How about this? Instead of, I want to tell you about the benefits of creating an effective resume, I start out by telling you a little bit of a story, such as, not too long ago, I had an opening for an analyst. I received 100 resumes in 2 days. What do you think the range of quality was on those resumes? So at this point, I put the audience in my shoes. We're both looking at resumes, and then I will move into an effective resume criteria. So it's subtle, it's not difficult to do, but it does take practice. Position you and the audience on the same side of the proverbial tennis net. Authenticity can be extremely hard to establish. I was at a meeting during my days in corporate America, and one of our senior VP of sales addressed the company, and he walked up confidently to the podium and he told a story from his days in the field, and he segued to an anecdote, and he gave a positive assessment of the company. He was animated, he had great slides, and everything should have been well received. But it wasn't. At the break, I spoke to several of my colleagues, and the words they used to describe his presentation was insincere, not real, calculated, he phoned it in, and what it came down to is he just wasn't authentic. And in my 20 years in business, I've seen time and time again how hard it is to come across in an authentic way, especially in a public setting with a lot of people in the audience. And the why is a little bit interesting in and of itself. Our brains process second conversations, which are nonverbal communications, a little bit differently. If the spoken language and the body language don't match up, the audience is going to respond to the nonverbal every time. And that's why you just can't stand up and tell the truth. Your emotions, your body language, everything has to be in sync, because the way we process things, our words are after the fact explanations of what we just gestured. Think about this. When you see someone you haven't met, you haven't seen in a long time, and you want to give them a hug, you actually start your movement of approaching them, opening your arms, and reaching for them in the hug before you say, hello, hi, great to see you again. And that is natural. It's natural to put body motions before language, and if we don't do those same things and we don't synchronize our movements and our voice, then we come across as not authentic. And in authentic speaking, words and gestures are perfectly timed, or gestures are fractionally ahead of the words. And that leads us to the catch-22 of rehearsal. If you rehearse so much that you become stiff and you become mechanical, you won't come across as authentic. Think of the person that says, I believe with all my heart, and then after they say their words, they tap their heart. That is a message sent to the audience that this is not true authenticity. This is a rehearsed, canned speech. So that has to be considered each time you present. Nothing substitutes for practice. It's authenticity is hard. Delivering a great presentation is hard work. I hope these first couple of slides, or these slides that we've presented to you today, is giving you an example or a little food for thought. I hope it encourages you to come see us in the center for extra help and advice and practice. As always, I want to thank you for joining us, and we'd love to hear your ideas on what you would like to see presented. Just let us know. For further information on all of our programs in the Center for Professional Excellence, please take a look at our website at www.wofford.edu/center. Until next time, have a great day.